A few of you have been asking me about what a really good writing task 1 for the GAT looks like, so I wrote one and today we'll be breaking it down. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Darren, a first year medical student studying at Monash University here in Melbourne, Australia. I graduated last year with an ATAR of 99.95, and today we'll be looking at a writing task which I recently wrote for the writing task 1 of the GAT, which we discussed in my last video. So in that last video we had a look at the writing tasks and also my preparation, and today I wrote one because you guys wanted to see what a good one looked like and had a couple questions about it. And so as I talk through the piece, I will address those concerns. Enjoy. We're looking at the 2017 GAT exam, so if you'd like to write a piece and then see how yours compares with mine, go for it. Otherwise you can just follow along with the video. So before we begin, I would like to address formatting. And let me make this a little bit smaller. Oops. Yeah. So with formatting, a lot of people were asking me about how important is it, whether they should do it, and how to integrate it. So if you don't know, formatting is the fact that you can use any text type for this piece. You can write it as a diary entry, a journal, a blog post, whatever you feel like. My opinion on it is that it doesn't matter and won't affect your score that much. Now the reason for this is I think that regardless of what text type you use, 95% of your content will be exactly the same. Because this task is testing your ability to integrate information and present it well, which isn't affected by the text type. All you change because of what style you're writing in might be the pronouns you're using, and the ending and beginning, you might start it differently, but I don't think it's a big issue. In year 11, I tried to be smart about it and wrote this speech that was a bit too waffly, and I didn't do well at all. And in year 12, I stuck with a very straightforward structure. I didn't really think about formatting at all, and it was basically like this piece I'm showing to you guys right now, and I ended up getting a 48. So I don't think it's that important. If you feel like having a different style will add a little twist to your piece, go for it, but don't focus too much and don't stress too much about it. Alright, let's dive into the piece then. So firstly with the intro, a distinction I like to make is a normal essay versus this kind of piece. So in a normal essay you'd have your introductory sentence and then your signposts in a very straightforward way. Signpost 1, body paragraph 1. Signpost 2, body paragraph 2. Here I like more of a general intro here, because these topics are often quite, and we're talking about coffee here, quite like broad and human-like. And some topics are like space exploration and all that, and I think it's difficult to capture, especially when you don't know how many body paragraphs you'll be writing. And so I think a general intro works much better here. So, the coffee we see in cafes is a deceptively simple drink, iconic appearance, distinctive aroma, belies a rich history and almost cult following. So here I am alluding to things I'll be talking about later, the smell of coffee, the history of coffee, the popularity of coffee, all things I'll be talking about, but it's not in that really rigid normal essay structure. The allure of coffee means it has become part of many people's daily routines. So honestly for these, just pick up one aspect of coffee that you like, or of the topic that you like, and just talk a little bit about it in your intro as a broad introduction. This part here is a descriptive section. In any essay I wrote, I like to have a little bit of description in there because it can evoke emotion, it evokes better imagery in the mind of the examiner, which is always a good thing because they can feel things more vividly and remember your piece more as well. Alright, let's dive into the bulk of the piece. I broke down which prompts on the right here that I used for what themes in my last video, and so I used those themes for my body paragraph here. So if we had a look here, first one is biological origins, which is essentially how is coffee made. Next is imports, exports. Next is origins of coffee, so both in Australia and Europe and comparing them. Origins of coffee. And now that I've talked about the origins of coffee, it's shifting into what is coffee now. So this is 2017. The most recent stats in this piece were from 2015, which were pretty recent at the time. So it's like, where is coffee now? So popularity of coffee now. And then I have my conclusion at the end. Okay, so let's go through the paragraphs then. We'll use blue for the first paragraph. A specific process must be followed to derive the final product we see in front of us. As always, you do have a topic sentence is a good idea, just to signal what you'll be talking about. Coffee is derived, especially since you don't have signposting in your intro. Coffee is derived from the beans of coffee plants, with the common choices being the Arabica bean and the Robusta bean. So, I'm using the evidence here. And see how I've smoothly mentioned it? I haven't said one bean is Arabica bean, one bean is Robusta bean. I've said, there are lots of beans that we use. Among those, 2 of them are blah, blah, blah. And that makes things more smoother. And then I go into describing them, which is quite a natural progression. You introduce something and then you talk about it. So Arabica beans are most popular, enjoyable taste. Robusta beans, high caffeine content, bitter flavor. So I like this comparison here where I have bitter flavor versus enjoyable taste, where I take the info from here and compare it. I don't just have it there in front of the examiner. I put 2 of them together and say, hey, look at this difference here. High in caffeine content and are often the preferred drink for those who have a long day ahead. So a little remark there. It says it's high in caffeine content, but it doesn't say anything about for those who have a long day. But I like putting it in there just for a little bit extra juice, I guess. And it's good because coffee invigorates the brain and the nervous system. Now, that came from here. And I think that ties in really nicely because I'm talking about high caffeine content and why is it good for people who have a long day ahead? Because it stimulates the brain and the nervous system. And further, I talk about the variety of coffee can be attributed to the diverse plant species available, while only 2 have been discussed, so I'm harking back to earlier in the piece, and then I say there are more than 60 plant species. So once again, everyone knows the information is there. I'm not adding anything new to the conversation. I'm just trying to integrate it well and maybe have a few little remarks here and there. So that 61 was from here as well. And now I've talked about the beans and where they come from. So what's a natural progression here if I'm talking about biological origins and the process? The next progression would be what happens to these beans, and that is roasted, ground, and transformed. And this is taking it from here. A smooth progression once again. And now we're done with the beans. We've processed them. What's next? Well, we look at the final product, and the final product is plant-based caffeine. And what can we do with that? Not just in coffee, but in a range of popular drinks such as hot chocolate, black tea, and cola. And that is using this information here. Something important to note is that you don't have to mention every single drink here. So there are 8 drinks here. I didn't mention all of them because it'd be too much like just smacking the examiner with a hammer over the head. And it doesn't really show anything. I think having 3 shows your ability to interact with the prompt, but showing 8 doesn't add anything extra to that. And that's another key point in the GAT. You don't have to put every single piece of information in there. And like I said in my previous video, an excellent essay here means that the examiner forgets about your job. So they forget that there's all this information here because you've done it so smoothly. Let's move on to paragraph 2, and we will use purple. Okay, I need to purple. So imports, exports. Due to the intense popularity of coffee, there was a booming market across the world. So I don't just say, next we'll be talking about imports, exports. Try and have it in quite fluidly. Top 5 major exporters were, top consumers were, and so that's using the information here. And also here. Notice how I don't use the numbers in here. I feel like if you have too many numbers, it reminds the examiner too much of your task, and it's also just a bit boring to read and feels like not smooth at all. And I didn't just leave it at here because I feel like if I just left it there, it'd be quite dry and abrupt and feels like this paragraph isn't complete. So I have this little sentence here, just, the spread of coffee is evident. You see so many different countries drinking and importing coffee. And that's just a remark on the information that I've been given. Right, next, origins of coffee. Let's use orange. Australia, however, is not found on either top 5 lists. So this links to the earlier paragraph I'm talking about. I was talking about top 5, Australia's not on there. And then I say, hey, why is that? That's because coffee drinking began in different ways. So in Europe, and to American colonies, it spread in the 17th century, whereas in Australia, it was in this later time period, and it was coffee palaces. And here is me trying to integrate these two timelines. And the way I'm trying to do it is by comparing them. So with timelines, you can either split the timeline into parts and link different parts to different prompts, or comparing is a good way as well when you're given two timelines. And that's a way to integrate it smoothly rather than saying, like, if you did a whole paragraph on the history of coffee in Australia, that's not showing good integration at all because it's all just from one prompt. You're just describing what the prompt says. But if you're putting two prompts together and comparing them, that shows good integration. And further, I show another difference. The drink gained more popular public opinion as a part of jazz culture. So once again, showing the late bloom of coffee in Australia. And I'm saying the popularity is boosted by American servicemen. So that's just me using some more of here. And then because American servicemen ties in with this quote here, that's what I do. I mentioned the quote here, nobody can soldier without coffee. And it's good to introduce quotes quite in like a good and smooth way. So it can be seen in a quote by Union Cavalry, Ebenezer Gilpin, who remarked that, so just in a fluid way, and the influence of American servicemen during World War II led to greater uptake of coffee in Australia, as can be seen in the bustling Legend Cafe in Melbourne in 1959. So that was using this picture here. I assume that's what the picture's showing. So this paragraph, I had to get a lot of information together, and the way I did that was by comparing timelines and then talking about Australia's progression, and then America's influence, and then the ultimate, like the impact, which is in the Legend Cafe, which is how I got that in there. And because it's given a date as well, I think it says 1959, so it's after when the American servicemen came. Alright, let's move on to the popularity of coffee now, and we'll change to green. Though coffee gained traction later in Australia, a common theme between Australia and other countries is the ultimate popularity of the drink. So even though in the previous paragraph I'm comparing the origins, I'm saying in the end, coffee sort of ended up in the same place and it's popular everywhere. And this can most accurately be tracked in comparison with tea. So here I'm introducing this table here, and I'm trying to do it smoothly. I'm saying coffee is increasing, and a good way of tracking its increased popularity is by comparing it with another drink, which was the original default drink. 1938, blah, 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 2015, blah, blah, blah. So I just took this first stat and this last stat. Similar to what I was saying before, I don't think there's a need to mention every single stat here. But since the whole thing's stats, you still have to mention some numbers here, because otherwise there's nothing to draw from this graph. But you don't need to mention every single timeline. I think tracking the beginning and the end, or whatever helps serve your contention, is enough. T's amount per capita, so that's comparing. And then I make a remark about it. Coffee has attained undeniable significance in their lives. In fact, and this is the quote I'm using here, as if the drink itself is now becoming a symbol of a new day. So I'm talking about how much coffee has gained popularity. And this quote, when I read it, it's about popularity. This graph, so this quote here is about popularity. This quote here, this graph here, it shows popularity. So I've linked those two together because they're relating to a common theme. Alright, so before we move on to the conclusion, you can see that I've basically integrated most of these prompts. You don't have to get all of them, but I'd say like this is good. You don't want to miss too many. If you can integrate as many of them as possible, that'd be good. But you also don't want it to come at a cost of having fluid writing. Do remember that usually these do have themes resonating in them, otherwise the examiners wouldn't put them there. So if you're struggling, just think that there must be something connecting these, and hopefully that will guide you to a common theme. Alright, let's move on to the conclusion, and we'll return to blue. The simple act of drinking coffee is one that unites people all around the world. Looking at the small cup in your hands, it is difficult not to marvel at the drink's illustrious history and biological creation. So, I guess a little bit of summary here. I'm mentioning what was talked about earlier, but this is just a nice sounding intro. So a nice sounding intro. Nice sounding conclusion, my bad. Oops. Not sure what happened there. Nice sounding conclusion. Yeah, so with your conclusion, once again, it's not like your normal essay where you have to either summarize or go really philosophical with it. I think you can look to the future is a good option. Just a remark like I've made. And like regardless of what topic you get, any essay, any time, any age, anything that sounds good will go down well with the examiner. And this just sounds good. It's just a nice ending, and it also connects a bit to what I was talking about earlier in the piece about how you see people rushing on the sidewalk, standing on the tram, and it's this imagery and this everyday application of coffee that really visualizes, that the examiner can really visualize, and it's this image that I'll leave them with so they have a very strong impression of my writing piece. Thank you guys for tuning in to today's video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm unsure when you guys will actually get a fixed date for the GAT, but it shouldn't be too far considering that your oral exams and your actual exams are coming up. As we head into the ending of the whole year with your assessments piling up, with your exams coming, if you feel stressed, if you'd like me to make videos about any concepts, any subjects, any parts of exams that you're worried about, please let me know in the comments below and I'd be happy to consider them. Good luck for all your preparation, and I look forward to seeing you all next time.